About a year ago from the upload of this video, I covered the best cryomancers or ice users in fighting games. Now I think it's time that we warm up from that list with the best pyromancers or fire users in fighting games, which has been suggested by plenty of viewers as a perfect follow-up. Similar rules to the cryomancer list, these fighting game characters primarily have to use fire-based attacks. They can use the fire raw or channel the fire through their hand-to-hand fighting styles or weapons, but if they have other elemental attacks, or if the fiery strike is just one of their many attacks with the rest not focusing on fire, they are basically ineligible. Also, since Mancer is the suffix of Pyromancer, these characters have to produce fire on their own through essentially magic or raw ability, so no characters that get all their fire through some sort of technology. Finally, one character per series of origin, and since some of these characters love to cross over in other fighting games from time to time, of origin are the key words here. It's fine if they originated outside of fighting games though. Now let's turn up the heat with my top 10 pyromancers in fighting games. Number 10, Kazuki Kazama from Samurai Shodown. This guy uses his pyrokinesis to light his sword on fire. That's pretty metal. He looks pretty on edge all the time, but he just wants to protect his sister like a good brother should, so he's rather charming. His main gimmick involves building up floating fireballs that he can use as projectiles. And the fireballs can get even bigger because this man laughs at restraint. He can also burn you as he pleases by channeling the fire through his sword. Luckily, he's a skilled ninja, so he's not just swinging his sword fire around arbitrarily. Without the sword, he's still deadly. He'll grab you and release all the fire in one burst, or become the fire and run into his opponent, with a mediocre game plan once he's on fire since he just kinda falls over after he makes contact. He can even go further beyond as he ups his firepower in an intense explosion around himself. My favorite move though is his teleport, where it looks like he's going to power up like normal, but instead his top half explodes and Kazuki reappears on the screen somewhere else perfectly fine. I love how his legs stay on the screen for a moment and flop over. That's good comedy. Number 9, Cinder from Killer Instinct. Cinder has the powers of being a guy on fire, and he has the personality of a guy on fire, at least in the original game. Initially, he doesn't do much for the story outside of being a criminal who participates in an experiment by the evil technology corporation Ultratech. The result of the experiments is being on fire all the time, and I don't think he can turn it off. Where does he live? Ultratech wanted him to face off against the ice alien Glacius for one reason or another in both games, being the natural counter to ice. They also look alike to show how they're parallels of each other. You almost can't tell the difference when Cinder has his blue color scheme on. But 2013 Cinder is a lot more bombastic, cracking some jokes and clearly having fun with his destructive powers.
I would not want to be you today.
I like how his skin now looks like it's made of solidified molten rock. It adds that extra flair to his design. As for his attacks in all games, they come naturally for what you'd expect from his appearance. He shoots fireballs of varying sizes, whether they be a bunch of tiny ones or a large singular sphere. He can also just fling himself in various directions to create flaming torpedoes of sorts with his own body, which means the fire allows him to defy gravity. Don't ask for an explanation on how at this point. He finds even more fire under his fire to boost his firepower temporarily fire. I'm sure his basic punches and kicks burn a little too, so add in that he still knows how to fight hand to hand and you have yourself a character that can burn you with no effort.
That was too much fun!
Number 8, Mai Shiranui from Fatal Fury. Just like the other good boys and girls on this list, Mai can produce fire out of thin air, but unlike most of them, she has little control over where it will go or how it will spread. Yeah, I mean, we know where the fire's gonna go since they're preset animations based on button inputs, but Mai has no idea what will happen and makes it a free-for-all when the fire is out. Just tell her not to fight in the forest or gas station, or anywhere else that's highly flammable. Her fire having a sporadic nature fits with her eccentric and over-the-top personality. Despite seeming like a more calm, seductive character, Mai's a goofball, for lack of a better term. Her endings portray her as more of a cartoony anime comic relief character, which is a funny contrast. Her reactions are akin to, "Oh god, why'd I choose such a combustible element?" She also tries to get Andy Bogart to marry her using various comedic persuasion methods, despite his incredible unwillingness, so she reminds me of all the funny scenes in Tenchi Muyo too. She even uses her illusion powers to trick him momentarily into thinking they had a baby, so she is self-aware about her crazy love and her lack of fire safety. Something about that makes her more endearing to me. After she and many other Fatal Fury characters joined the big SNK crossover King of Fighters, she may have gotten some animation upgrades, but her fiery touch remained the same. She does this hip check that releases a puff of fire, and she just lights herself on fire and runs into the opponent. For the latter attack, it looks like she actually has full control of the situation, but I like to imagine that she's running in a panic to put out the fire every time she uses this attack and just happens to collide with the opponent when it extinguishes. It's like how Flaming Wario in the Wario Land series implies that he has fire powers, but he's really just burning alive and happens to hurt everything around himself. Though Mai has taught herself some fire control, as she has a couple of bigger attacks that just light the opponent on fire without putting herself at risk for a burn, showing that she's indeed Japan's best. Number 7. Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear. Soul is a living biological weapon of war, aka a gear, so naturally he has some inhuman abilities. Particularly, he can shoot fire out of who knows where. He has a specially made sword, Fire Seal, which allows him to manipulate and amplify his fire powers, so most of the time this fire has a set pathway, shooting right out of the ground or staying in front of him. When he doesn't use the sword, the fire appears more scattered and uncontrollable, like when he kicks it out. Though he seems to have enough restraint where he won't hurt anyone he doesn't want to. This is somewhat evident in his Dragon Install form, where he taps into his gear powers for an overall power boost while still retaining his sanity. The fire consumes him, and now he looks like this dragon demon guy, with his fighting style the same, only better, stronger, and faster. Debatable if it's harder now. He'll even still talk to you like normal, he just looks scary, and fire can be scary, so at least the appearance is appropriate. Number 6. Dalsim from Street Fighter. Street Fighter has a plethora of fire aficionados. While many fighters can make certain special moves light up with sheer force or key control, few make fire their key gimmick. While I love how Sagat's mastery of Muay Thai has somehow enabled him to shoot latent fire out of his palms, I feel Dalsim's mastery of pyrokinesis is the most classic of the classic characters. We know his stretchy limbs and basic fighting style were enabled by his study of yoga, but his fire powers have varying backstories, with the generally accepted one being that they were bestowed upon him by the Hindu god of fire. That being said, I always used to think he became so proficient at the practice of yoga that it unlocked some dormant ability to release literal fire that only the most skilled humans could harness, mostly because he put the term yoga in front of all of his fire-based attack names. His two most prominent fire attacks are Yoga Fire and Yoga Flame. Yoga Fire is a projectile that always finds a way to hit you despite it taking a year to travel across the screen, if it's the light variation. Yoga Flame just sprays a flame in front of Dalsim, but it hits hard and knocks the opponent to the ground. I always loved how he has to inhale heavily before this attack, making it feel like he's really reaching deep for that fire. Those attacks are the two main pillars of his other fire attacks, usually being super move versions of Yoga Fire and Flame. He can shoot his flame onto the ground to make the world's most deadly carpet, or in the air to turn himself into a human volcano with an even more intense yoga flame. And you can't ignore when he does a goodness gracious great ball of fire. Oh, I can avoid that. It's such a large, highly visible target that I can just wait, stop distracting me, Dalsim. Oh god, the flames are searing.
Well done, child.
Number 5. Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. It took a few games until Scorpion consistently started using fire-based attacks in the actual matches and not just for his finishing moves. In reality, there's no explanation why it took him until Mortal Kombat 4 to start using his Skull Fire as a standard attack, but we gradually saw more fire added to Scorpion's moveset over the years. In my opinion, his most famous non-fatality fire attack is his Hellfire, where he summons fire from the floor, engulfing his grounded enemy in flames for a few seconds. As the name implies, you're not just dealing with basic man-made fire anymore, this is the hottest fire imaginable. Even his most basic punches and kicks started getting a fiery stream on them depending on the combo strings used, making those hits feel as powerful as hell itself. Liu Kang may have also been a big fire user from the first game, but Scorpion knew if he took off his mask to breathe fire at that point, it would be an instant win since the fire is so powerful on its own, which is why he reserved it for a fatality only. Brings new meaning to the term toasty.
Toasty! Scorpion wins. Fatality.
Some of his special moves that were fire-free in the original trilogy, like his teleport punch, now burned with his passion and/or anger. Though with all those fiery additions after the original games, I think Mortal Kombat X and 11 had the biggest net gain of fire attacks for Scorpion overall. For new attacks, he could now engulf himself in flames to do the same to his enemy, and NetherRealm also said screw it and gave him a straight fireball for once. My favorite fire attack added in Mortal Kombat 11 is when he flares through his opponent and grabs them by the head, turning into a flaming skeleton for a second before transferring all of the fire over to his hand holding the opponent. Despite being revived as his human self in these games, Scorpion still has his fiery hellspawn powers. The canonical reasoning is that he was so engulfed in rage during his time as a Spectre that the flames became a part of him for good, living or dead. However, the real-life explanation is that they wanted to have a human Scorpion costume and couldn't just omit half his moveset that was based around his supernatural fire abilities. The fire was so ingrained with everything that he did, I could not see them replacing it with anything else visually. That being said, I'm fine with the explanation since it created a badass moment in the story where Sector sprays Scorpion with a flamethrower and Scorpion just stands there like, oh, is there a light breeze in here? Your fire technology means nothing to me, unless it's an actual match where all moves need to affect characters for proper balance. Regardless, Scorpion has been to hell and back and has these fire powers as his main souvenir to prove it.
To hell with you!
Number 4. Ghost Rider in the Marvel vs. Capcom series. Ghost Rider was one of my favorite characters to play in the whole franchise. He may have not had super long combos or too much broken stuff, but I always loved using his full screen chain with a dose of hellfire. Of the two major Marvel characters with their heads on fire, Dormammu may have had the bigger flame in one super move, but Ghost Rider had more variety into how he incorporated fire into his attacks. Actually, Meteor Shower was also pretty cool. I'd probably have them both here if it wasn't for that one per series of Origin rule, to be honest.
Never again will you defy my influence, Blade. One of our flames will be extinguished this day. Mine.
Hey, your head's on fire!
Ghost Rider has the common fire vomit ability we've seen from other entries, but the fun starts when he combines his fire with his chain. His chain of rebuttal fills the chain with hellfire, bouncing the opponent against the wall for more combo opportunities or just creating a scattering of chain links on fire. Just try approaching him when all those chain links are out, it's much harder than it looks. Then he can grab you with his chain while burning you, with the best version of this attack being the anti-air grab, where he pumps the end of his chain with fire as you sit in the air waiting for the pain to end. And of course, his super moves turn up the heat even more. His spinning chain super has more utility as a combo ender, showing the full extent of his flaming chain.
Stay in the shadow.
But his coolest one to me is his Hellfire motorcycle, where he grinds his opponent against the front wheel. Colliding with a motorcycle hurts on its own, but when he does wheelies during this move, it adds insult to injury, and the fire adds more injury to injury. His penance stare also has a lot of fire, but that seems to mostly be mental illusion. Still looks cool though. Finally, Ghost Rider has a lot to say, having unique dialogue with many of the characters on varying topics, even the occasional joke.
Your Honor, the defense is ready to present.
Do you have any idea how many lawyers are in hell?
When he tells you off after a match with a special line, it makes you feel like the opponent was a total joke to him and he just needs one sentence to lecture them. And hey, some of these lines are fire themed to go with this topic.
Johnny Blaze rides again.
Hyper Combo KO! Player 1 wins!
Your bike can use a nice dose of hellfire. Trash.
Number 3, Yukiko in Persona 4 Arena. Yukiko has the prettiest attacks of anyone on this list. She dances as she does them, filling the screen with fire that moves around like she's on stage with a stunning visual performance.
I'll show you my dance!
Her persona Konohana Sakuya throws out the fire to start the spectacle, and then the fire can bring the opponent to all ends of the stage and back to the center. Yukiko's main projectiles generally involve her concentrating heavy fire onto areas of the screen or just throwing out puffs of fire in front of her. The best way to describe how Yukiko's fire moves around on the screen is elegant, just like Yukiko herself. Contrasting her elegance, I also like that she's the one most likely to snap, as seen in her joke ending, where she assaults everyone to try her delicious lunch that has actually gone rancid and knocks them unconscious with how bad it tastes.
Holy crap!
I know it's non-canon, but it falls under the category of I'd believe it. Good thing she's not actually that unhinged, or else giving her fire would make her the true one to fear.
Function shutting down. Look a little sweat.
Number 2, Pyron from Darkstalkers. Pyron has the powers of a guy on fire, with horns. No, he actually has a lot more going on for him. He's an alien made of solar energy, so he's like an evil living sun man who doesn't burn up the earth instantly like the real sun would if it was this close to the planet. Maybe the sun's a metaphor for his powers, and he's just really hot, in terms of heat, not in terms of attractiveness like that fish man. Pyron is the final boss of the first 2 games and just wants to take this planet to add it to his collection. He doesn't care about the game's plot, so I kind of like his screw-it-all personality, not caring about the bigger plot lines of the game since he just met all these creatures and has no connections to them. What a wild time for him to visit this planet. Succubi, vampires, and yetis just roam the streets freely. Being the final boss, he has some crazy powers. Even his normal moves have flair, creating mini volcanoes with just a basic poke. He turns into this massive wildfire using a simple button press. His fireball projectile is the size of his opponent. It has the effect of most base projectiles, but it has the appearance of your doom. And he can turn into a wheel of fire, but that pales in comparison to his superior method of transportation, the fire tornado. Pyron also likes explosions made of rainbow fire. He even has a dive punch, that madman. This all shows us that Pyron's firepower is overwhelming and makes him worthy of being that character to destroy you at the end of the arcade ladder. Since there are loads of fire users in fighting games, let's race through these honorable mentions. Fuma from World Heroes. He was based off a real guy, who I don't think had actual fire powers in reality. Hanzo Hattori from Samurai Showdown. He was based off a real guy, who I don't think could punch the ground to actually make fire erupt out of it. Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat. The original Mortal Kombat roster member with a fireball. Shang Tsung from Mortal Kombat. The original Mortal Kombat final boss with a fireball. Kintaro from Mortal Kombat, the original Mortal Kombat sub-boss with a fireball. Blaze from Mortal Kombat, the original, guy with the powers of being a guy on fire in Mortal Kombat. Ryu, Ken, Sagat, Fei Long, G, and Gil from Street Fighter. They all use fire in one way or another, but G says light him up when he does his super move, so he's infinitely cooler. Every Soul Calibur character who's about to do an unblockable attack. So is this just an effect, or is there a universal teaching in the Soul Calibur universe I'm unaware of? Aeon the Lizard Man in Soul Calibur 5. Even if the fire on the unblockables is just an effect, this guy breathes fire to guarantee someone knows how to use it. 9 from BlazBlue. She uses all the elements, but she shows a lot of favoritism to fire. Firestorm in Injustice 2. Look at him, the man loves fire. Charizard, Incineroar, Ridley, Bowser, and Mario in Super Smash Bros. I never thought of Mario as a Pyromancer, but I guess he checks the boxes. And Iori and K-Dash from King of Fighters. Alas, they were foiled by the 1 per series of origin rule. Wait, did I discuss someone who started off in King of Fighters yet? Earlier, I discussed how Mai made her way over to the King of Fighters series, but she was not the top Pyromancer in those games compared to a character that originated in that series, and sometimes it's hard to top the main character. Number 1, Kyo Kusanagi from King of Fighters. While he never had the title Chosen One, he was the guy that needed to save the world on multiple occasions. He defeats the guy who's trying to summon the Demon of Destruction Orochi, then he defeats another guy who's trying to summon Orochi, and then he goes to the source and just defeats Orochi. This is tied to Kyo's whole rivalry with Iori Yagami, caused by their family's multi-century long conflict with each other over the Yagami family embracing Orochi's power and the Kusanagi family rejecting it. The ancestry element of the story is fitting since that's how Kyo got his powers. Pyrokinesis abilities were passed down in his family, so by the time Kyo got them, he was like, cool, just like dad. Kyo makes his fire powers look stylish despite using many of the tricks we've seen on this list. To start, he releases bursts of fire in front of him when doing many of his hand-to-hand attacks. And who doesn't love that majestic spin in the air while he releases the fire from both hands? That spiral of fire is pure art.
KO! You win!
満足したか、ヤガミ。
His main projectile channels the fire through the ground, which is a nice change of pace from most of the other fireballs. He generally saves the more traditional fireballs for his super moves. Considering this character has been around for every version of King of Fighters, Kyo's moveset has had plenty of tweaks made to it over the years. For example, the version of him after the Orochi storyline, being the Nest Saga, changed up elements of his moveset to reflect his father's playstyle. But during that time, SNK found ways to have both movesets, like having the mystical Chizuru create Kusanagi, a clone of Kyo meant to test the other fighters using Kyo's original moveset. And by King of Fighters 13, when Kyo played more like his traditional self, SNK just made Nest's era Kyo a separate character with no backstory required. The cloning plotline actually shows how desirable his powers are in this universe. Nests even gave short-term protagonist K-Dash Kyo's powers through experimentation, showing that there's more to this fighting style than visual appeal. And shoutouts to Iori again, whose name I'm never sure if I'm pronouncing correctly, who probably would have been number 2 on this list if I didn't have that pesky 1 per series of origin rule. So Kyo beats his rival in-game and on this list as the number 1 Pyromancer in fighting games. Now, what did you think? Agree? Disagree? Which fire users lit up this list properly, and who did I extinguish before they even got a chance to show off? I know there are a lot of possibilities out there, so let me know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.